So this third video in the sequence is going to look at how to understand and manage the bill of materials after you've scanned a project. This is the project that I've scanned, and by clicking on it, we can see the list of versions. I only have one version at the moment, which is 1.0. Going into the bill of materials, I see the components which were scanned. And the first thing to notice is we can see the status of the scan here. By clicking on this, we see the two separate scans which were completed. The first one is the signature scan with a size, and the second one is a dependency scan with the word BOM in it. If I wanted to, I could investigate what they look like. Returning to the component list, the first thing we need to do is to try to understand whether this is an accurate scan and if there's anything that we need to filter or remove. So we can use filtering here to understand the way that things were scanned. So for example, if I wanted to look at the things that came from the signature scan rather than dependency scan, I would select the different types of options here that represent a signature scan: exact file, exact directory, files modified. And here we see the three things that came from the signature scan and not from the directory hierarchy. Now what we can do is to have a look at this match type of exact directory and see where this component was found. So if we look at this component here, we automatically browse to the source tab and we can mouse over that to see where that particular component is. And this appears to be a jar which was identified within Gradle itself. So this is a Gradle wrapper jar and the particular component which has been added here. Returning to the component list, I may decide that this is identified correctly, but it's something that I want to exclude from the project. And there are two ways of doing this. The first is that you can actually ignore the component. If I do that, then it will be removed from this view. It remains in the bill of materials, but is no longer visible. If you want to see that, then you can actually go to the filter and you can select on Ignored to see components which have previously been ignored, and you can unignore them afterwards. Alternatively, if you don't want to ignore something, then you can actually edit its status. And this allows you to change the way that the component has been marked as used in the application. So we could say this is excluded. The thing to note here is that this will not remove it from the bill of materials. It will, however, remove it as a license risk if there is a license risk for this component, because it is considered to be not part of the delivered application, but security risk will continue to be shown. This is useful because you may want to not include it in the bill of materials, in the notices file, and you may want to remove it from the license compliance, but you do want to track security on it. In this case, you see that we've marked it as DevTool excluded, and if it was a license risk, which it isn't this case, then it would have been removed. Notice that the component has been shown as being modified, and there is an audit trail if you want to have a look of what's being done. So removing the filter and returning to all components. The next thing is that you should mark components as reviewed. So this is shown in this column here under the tick mark. You can do this on individual components, or you can do it globally. The objective here is that you're saying not that you accept that this component complies with policy, but that it is inside the project. And the reason we do this is so that we can track changes, and you can see after you've done this review the subsequent scans and things which are new or different. So if I click on Select All here, and then say Mark as reviewed, then we will review everything on this page. Note that you will have to repeat this on subsequent pages because this only operates on the 99 components on this page. So all the components have been marked as reviewed, and if we were to rescan into this same project, the new scan would overwrite the previous scan and show any new or changed components, and we could then use the filter to identify things which have not been reviewed. So we simply look at review status and we say not reviewed. And in this case, we would see if anything has changed from the last time. It's important to note that each version has its own settings, including obviously its name and other components, but there are factors which can change the way that the policies are applied to it. So for example, each version can be in a different phase, and also can have a different distribution, and this will change the overall license risk. If you want to understand license risk, then see the separate video on license risk. If we return to the project itself, there also are global settings for the project and all the subversions. And looking at that, you can see there are some important components here around tier and the owner for things like automatic escalation of issues. But there are also these factors here, and these define whether or not changes, adjustments that you make in a version will actually apply to all the other versions. Turning this off would mean that the versions are essentially disconnected and changes would not be propagated. This is also useful for when you clone as well. It is possible to clone an existing project into a new one and take other information which isn't typically shared between projects. So this is the right way to create a new project version where you want to maintain your previous information. So the next video in this sequence would be to look at the license risk so that you can understand how to work on that. Thank you very much.